In 1912, 100 years ago, there was a Billboard commission in New York. 86 years ago, October 10th, 1926, this picture was taken in Tacoma, Washington, just outside the office of the local newspaper, the News Tribune. It was the only way the local folk could find out with any immediacy who would win the World Series. These folks didn't realize it at the time, but the age of distraction had just begun. 1 month before the World Series, RCA, the Radio Corporation of America, started NBC, the national broadcasting company. No longer would people have to go downtown to get the news off the wire. Less than 12 weeks after the World Series, on New Year's Day in 1927, NBC broadcast the Rose Bowl football game from Pasadena, the first national broadcast. Today, we live in a world of mega distraction. Hundreds of television and radio channels, the internet, smartphones, and advertising everywhere. It isn't even about the brands or the products anymore. It's all about distraction addiction. Many of us probably have some form of attention deficit disorder at one time or another. And the biggest problem with intrusive, outdoor, in-your-face advertising is that you can't turn it off.
I teach for South Dakota State University, and my students at this point don't look at billboards whatsoever. They look at smartphones. They never leave their home without knowing where they're going. They look at their computer. They figure out the address that they're going to. Billboards are dinosaurs. We don't need them anymore. They're an outdated technology.
So why are billboards still around? Well, the short answer is they're still profitable.
But it's very tough to fight the outdoor advertising industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's very powerful. They're very experienced. They have attorneys and executives that have been putting billboards in communities and overcoming obstacles for decades.
Everyone involved in this struggle knows how difficult it can be, but that is no reason not to fight the blight caused by excessive outdoor advertising. There's no secret to success, but we've discovered some essential components: solidarity and sharing stories.
When you can communicate to people in St. Petersburg and people in St. Paul and people in Tacoma, Washington and people in San Francisco, it gives you courage to go forward in your own battle. When you know that this same battle is being fought on different battlefields everywhere.
Your own survey told you that over 80% of the people in this county said no more billboards. You didn't ask about digital billboards.
We have to get people to see that for our children and our grandchildren, once we blight and once we put up billboards, it's very difficult to take them down. And so we have to have a sense of protectionism, and that's going to take education, and that's one of the things that we're trying to do.
It's an awareness problem. Now people are aware because of things like we have that I'm standing in front of. They're so bad, they're so obnoxious that people are upset, and when they're upset, then they act.
We've done a survey here which shows people are definitely not in favor of digital billboards. We talked to an awful lot of people, and they really want to protect their skies, their viewscapes. They really don't want Reno to be known as the biggest little billboard capital in the world. What kind of country do we want to leave behind us? What do we want to say on our tombstone? And we certainly don't want to say on our tombstone that we were for billboards.
Well, billboards are not pro-business. They're actually anti-business. They ruin the curb appeal of a community. They add to the sign clutter, and it detracts from the community in such a way that it actually drives people away.
From my standpoint, and from all the folks that I've worked with in the community, I don't think there's any support for new billboards or digital billboards anywhere in the county.
When the residents stand up, and then there's a pushback. The problem is the billboard companies are very good at what they do, and they pick communities that they know are politically weak. They go after the people that are working class and maybe the middle class, but they're not going into the wealthy communities and pulling these shenanigans because they know they're not going to get away with it.
I think there needs to be a broader initiative in terms of trying to bring state and local legislatures up in terms of their education about the issue based on best practices for legislation and looking at precedents of legal cases regarding billboards, and to not feel that they have to quickly pass legislation, and that there are legal experts out there that can assist in crafting legislation, that it would be more beneficial for governments. And I think that is what has to happen in the future.
You win on these billboard issues by being totally engaged in knowing everything about all the existing billboards and anything that's planned on a site-by-site basis. This isn't the kind of issue where you just simply win on the policy basis, go home thinking it'll all be taken care of by the respective governmental jurisdictions that are supposed to take care of it.
This is so beyond an environmental problem, a safety problem, an aesthetic problem. This is an existential problem, folks. This is an existential problem of what kind of world we want to live in, and we better get a grip on it before somebody takes it all away from us. We have to fight very hard for what we have, and we better get going.
At the end of the day, the situation in some of the places that we have shown is better in some cases, unchanged, or even worse in others. It's the constantly changing picture. But I believe that in the near future it will become apparent that those advertisers using intrusive forms of outdoor advertising will begin to realize that they are alienating as many people as they are influencing. Another thing that has become clear to me as I've witnessed these battles up close and personal, the movement against visual pollution is growing rapidly, and as more and more cities are faced with the issue of digital billboard proliferation, it becomes crucial that they have access to information on how other cities and counties are dealing with it. Scenic America is the one national organization that can provide that. The Scenic America website is a great resource that can give you the news and also help you to find organizations in your area that are already in place. It's a movement. It's an inspiration. It is the parish. There are several additional chapters in the special features of this DVD. Painting the Town Red relates the remarkable story of Father Michael Flagger and Vince Clark, who led a drive to remove alcohol and tobacco billboard advertising from the St. Sabina Parish in Chicago. In 1990, when all other efforts failed, they began painting these billboards red. It's a great event in the history of the billboard wars, complete with a surprise ending. Our Billboards Good for Business tells the story of a couple in Reno, Nevada, whose small business, Lavender Ridge, has been devastated by a completely obtrusive billboard that was installed a few years ago. The chapter features remarkable scenic views and an effort in the City Council to convert conventional billboards to digital. Main Street Revisited goes to the hometown of Sinclair Lewis on the 90th anniversary of the publishing of his classic novel, Main Street. It shows the effect that billboards have had upon small-town America. There are additional chapters as well that can be accessed with the special features menu. We hope that you found this documentary to be informative. We realize that we have been able to tell only a small amount of the stories out there, and we realize that this struggle will be going on well into the future. This is a section of the Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge, just a couple of miles before it joins the Mississippi River. It's one of the most significant waterfowl breeding areas in the country. It's also just a couple miles down the road from the Mall of America. Nearly 50 years ago in 1965, President Lyndon Johnson signed the Highway Beautification Act to protect America's scenic beauty by limiting and even reducing the amount of billboards along our highways. The intent of the law was to restrict billboards to commercial and industrial zones along federal highways. Now, this is not a federal highway, but OMG to the nth degree. A jumbotron in a wildlife preserve? What the heck is this doing here? How bad does it have to get? before we realize that we're losing something truly irreplaceable. Our sense of beauty, our sense of dignity and pride, our sense of place and self. It's a slippery slope, and once you're on it, it's hard to crawl back up. So we're back to the board that originally got my attention and brought me into this whole struggle. The board went dark the last week of 2010 and was taken down a week later on January 3rd, 2011. Now, as this documentary is being finished 18 months later, it is still uncertain of how much the state of Minnesota is going to have to pay to Clear Channel. The board has gone from here, but less than 3 weeks later, what I believe to be the same board was installed in Minneapolis, intruding into someone else's life. This is one of the more iconic views in the entire United States, the view of San Francisco from Treasure Island, the Oakland Bay Bridge on the left. At the end of the bridge on the Oakland side, there are 3 digital billboards. This is the view of practically the entire Bay Area from the top of the Oakland-Berkeley landscape. The digital billboards are approximately 6 miles away from this spot. As the evening sets in, it becomes apparent that these billboards are the brightest, most obtrusive objects in the entire Bay, and they're probably going to be there for 20, 30, 40, or more years.